Hey everybody, welcome to Take the Black Live, the show
Hello.
where we cover all the... What's that, Josh?
I said hello.
Oh, good. Well, I'm talking, so keep yourself close to yourself. Sorry, no, I am Dan Selcke, editor of WintersComing.net. Mia Johnson is out this week and next for vacation, so filling in is our friend of the show and Songman and Josh paid her, Josh Hill.
That's right.
Editor-in-chief of Fansided.
Editorial director.
Editorial director of Fansided.
I will
Sorry,
take the
don't wanna besmirch
promotion,
you.
but
Anyway, how are you doing, Josh?
I'm doing good. Am I allowed to speak now?
Yes.
No, I'm doing
very
good.
orderly here.
We have lots of people in the chat. Julie's always here.
Julie's always here. Hey, Julie.
Hi.
Cool. Anyway, I thought we'd start with something that we got to premiere exclusively last week. Game of Thrones is over. We all know that. Right now, HBO's put out all these kind of really cool coffee table books on things like the photography of Game of Thrones, the storyboards, the artwork, and we got to premiere the trailer for the costumes of Game of Thrones. If you're looking to get this, I think it's a really worthy buy. Why don't we look into it a little bit? Very cool. Josh, are you a costume person? Do you pay attention to the costumes on the show?
I do, but not incredibly in depth. I appreciate them because
Sure.
there's I mean, it's like the descriptions that we read in the book, like how George R. R. Martin is very elegant in the way that he likes to describe these things, and I feel like the costumes, they translated that.
Oh, sure.
I'm fascinated by costumes in general, like with
Are ya?
like
Like,
the Oscars,
really?
like the Oscars. Yeah, like whenever that comes around, like just seeing like all of these, because it adds flavor to whatever you're going with.
It's one of those details that you don't always think about, but I mean, in Game of Thrones, they always did stand out to me. Like, there were always some that just, like, popped. Like,
Yeah.
Cersei's dress popped a lot. Whenever Daenerys wore, always popped a lot. Sansa, her final dress always popped a lot. And honestly, I'm not being just a shiller for this book, though it does look really good. I think it looks really, really interesting. And if HBO wants to send me a free copy to review, I would love that. And just to dig into it. But that thing is out November 12th for 75 American dollars.
That's a lot of moolah.
You think so? 75 bucks for a hard... It's probably hardback.
Well, I mean, I would hope so. if I'm going with a coffee table book, it's got to be
Naturally.
sturdy.
It is gorgeous, though. And it'll feature,
is.
like, insights from Michelle Clapton, the costume designer, and other folk from behind the scenes of the show. I love that aspect of the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next. I wonder if we'll ever get a show, Josh, where things like costumery and special effects and everything will come together like this again to create a whole other world.
A whole fantastical other
Obviously,
world
people
we
are
can
going to
escape
try, and we'll talk about that a little later.
to. We are.
But first, I thought I figured we would touch on the latest chapter in the long saga of people being mad about the end of Game of Thrones, just real quick.
Yes.
Not for long, because I know it's an unpleasant topic for some, but it's been months since the Game of Thrones has ended, and we're still kind of litigating the end of the show, and more specifically the reaction to the end of the show. And there was a poll that came out from YouGov recently in advance of the Emmys, where they're nominated for like all the Emmys, a record number, 32.
Ooh.
That's the most any show's been nominated for in a single year. Do you think they're going to win, by the way? Do you think it's
Oh,
gonna be like
God, they're going to clean
a-
up. Come on, yeah. This is like
thing?
the career achievement award that they're going to get. Like we saw it with all of the shits. Breaking Bad, Mad Men,
Yes.
Sopranos. Like any
The
kind
difference,
of...
though, is like those shows and Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, that happened too. Like those shows didn't get a giant backlash beforehand.
It's true. I don't know. The Sopranos finale wasn't necessarily
That's true.
beloved at the time.
That is true. People were, maybe you're right. I'm sure you are right. I'm sure they will get everything. But I think it's interesting the circumstances under it, people doing it. I'm looking forward to Twitter exploding again when they win Best Drama and everything else. Anyway, there was a poll that came out, just kind of like an actual scientific poll, not a Twitter poll where it's just like, what do you think? And just like people do that. a real poll that asked people, were you satisfied with the final season of Game of Thrones? They were asked about all Emmy-nominated shows.
Yeah.
Just to like get like a, I don't know,
Read
a
the
look.
room.
Yes. And 52% of people said they were satisfied or very satisfied with the final season, and 41% unhappy, 7% neutral. Now, I only bring this up because it's an actual, like, scientific actual poll.
Yeah.
And it was being sold around the net, including at Winter is Coming a bit, as, like, the majority of people liked Game of Thrones Season 8.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, 52% is a pretty slim margin.
It is, but it's still the majority. Like, they do this
It
with
is.
the test screenings for movies. They'll have
Yeah.
the cards, and they'll have, like, the top 2 is, like, highly recommend or just recommend. And
Yeah.
studies show that, like, people never, ever, ever want to check highly recommend. They always just,
Really?
yeah, because it's like they're saying, ooh, I highly, like, would I actually recommend this? So it's kind of the same thing. Like, was I actually satisfied? I'd be interested in seeing,
I relate to that.
Well, how many
Whenever I
people-
get, like, a test for that.
yeah, well, like, how many people actually checked highly satisfied? I feel like a majority of them were just satisfied, so they threw in the highly satisfied because then you don't know. It's like how Netflix is like 8 billion people watched this Adam Sandler movie this weekend, and it's like, I don't know, did they? We have no way of telling. You're just saying this, so.
Anyway, I think we need to put that in perspective. And I'm looking forward to next week. We're almost at the Emmys, by the way.
We are.
It's like in 2 weeks? Like a week and a half? Next week we'll go into all the nominations, people who are going to, who's going to win what. So I'm looking forward to that. To kind of parsing out who you want to win. Who do you want to win? Okay, so did you know, by the way, the Best Supporting Actress category is 4 out of 6 Game of Thrones people.
Well, yeah, loading up.
Gwendolyn Christie, Brienne of Tarth, Lena Headey, Cersei Lannister, Maisie Williams as Arya, and Sophie Turner as Sansa are all nominated. They are more than half the people. Who would you give it to? And also, I think a Killing Eve lady or something is in there.
Yeah, Brienne of Tarth. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's
you know
do
what?
it.
I'm with
that
you.
was that was a grassroots campaign.
It was.
Didn't she kind of submitted herself?
Yes, like she and Theon submitted themselves. I think
Gwendolyn Christie is like it though. She's like really good.
I'd be totally okay with
I
that.
like that.
I'm very torn because I can say I have arguments for all of them. I think I'm with you though. I'd give it to Gwendolyn Christie. I think she's earned it.
I think so.
Anyway, moving on. So Game of Thrones is over, and we'll come back to this next week with the Emmys. As we mentioned, there's been a lot of news lately about all the things that are going to follow up Game of Thrones. There's like every day it's a new thing. Like today, they cast The Stand, Whoopi Goldberg, and Alexander Skarsgård is going to be a new, hot fantasy property. And everyone's getting in on it. Netflix has The Witcher, Amazon has The Wheel of Time, which also got a table read thing today. Lord of the Rings show, HBO's The Game of Thrones prequel, historic materials, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
What do you think the chances are that Apple TV Plus could swoop in and take the fantasy crown with something like C, the sweeping $15 million an episode post-apocalyptic show starring Jason Momoa as a blind warlord named Baba Voss, who is trying to protect his 2 seen children?
I thought this was a joke when I heard it the first time. I'm like, what?
If you just say it out loud, it sounds kind of interesting. Anyway, there's this new trailer for a new show coming up called C from Apple TV, which is what it just said. And I wanted to look at it and talk about it just for a minute, because I think it's emblematic of how everybody is trying to have this giant, fantasy epic show now.
Yeah.
And, can it work? Is it going... Are some of these doomed to fail? Like, which ones are going to rise? And why don't we just watch a little bit so we can have better informed chat about it?
The moment has come.
Centuries from now, almost all humans have lost the ability to see. Some say sight was taken from them by God to heal the earth. For the few who remain, vision is only a myth. But after so many years, the power of sight has returned.
What is it? Something's different. The children, they have the ability to see.
children. They have
Power that we would call magical or evil.
We must protect them.
For centuries, we feared this day would come. The evil of light once almost destroyed the world. And now it has returned. Find the
All
children.
right, so that wasn't the whole trailer because it goes on for like another minute and a half.
Yeah.
We don't want to, take up all your time here. You got time, people. But my question to you is, okay, A, does that look interesting?
Mildly interesting. It looks like Game of Thrones. It looks like Game of
It does
Thrones
kinda look
meets
like
like
Game of
the new Snow White reboot that they had.
I could see that.
a little bit of
I
that, the
saw
Huntsman
that.
or whatever it
Why
was.
did I see that in the theater? I don't know. But I did. And that looked dark and a lot of mist. You can't really see very well. Okay, so you're mildly interested. That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my bigger question is, do you think it's worth it to make... Because, okay, they're spending $15 million an episode.
Yes.
To have this, it's sweeping, it's big. It's not medieval, it's post-apocalyptic, which is just, medieval, but there are still some buildings
Yeah.
standing. Do you think it's worth it to spend that kind of money on this kind of sweeping epic show? What kind of return do you think Apple TV Plus will get for this?
Not a good one, because we've seen networks do this before, where it's like, I mean, Hulu eventually got there. Hulu eventually got there, and Amazon kind of has gotten there, but they don't have like that one big Game of Thrones show. Like Fleabag had a moment over the summer, but
like Handmaid's Tale has found an audience.
Handmaid's Tale has found an audience. And that's the closest thing I can see to a Game of Thrones. And then, but you have like, Schitt's Creek was on Pop TV or something like that.
And that thing persisted.
But it only got big because it was on Netflix. So like you can have these big shows. And Jason Momoa has been on quote unquote epic shows before, wasn't he on
Remember
that?
Frontier from
yeah,
Netflix?
Frontier,
which is kind of like this, honestly, but it was actual history.
And that was
not
on
fake future history. Netflix.
Sundance Channel though. Like the Sundance Channel produced that show, I believe. Yeah. So like there's all of these networks try to go for these things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a hit. Epix, the movie channel,
yeah,
they have a current show on, which is a remake of Get Shorty.
Okay.
But it's got Ray Romano on it and all this.
Cool.
You didn't know that existed until I just told you right now.
No
and I
idea.
could be making it up. I am not. But like they have this show with Everybody Loves Raymond on it about a book and a movie that everybody saw and everybody read. And nobody watches it, and it's not a thing. So, like, you don't just because you have a big show like this doesn't necessarily mean all of a sudden you've made it. I don't think that Apple TV is going to hit it off with this necessarily.
But folks are still spending the money on it.
They are,
Apple's
yeah.
spending the money on it. It's also making that morning show with Jennifer Aniston and
Reese Witherspoon,
and Steve Carell, which is costing like $1 billion an episode too, just because their salaries alone. How long do you do that before you think, okay, we got to get out? Assuming it doesn't become the next Game of Thrones.
I would give it a couple of seasons at least.
Okay.
Just because if you're investing that much money in there, because now we live in a world where you can go back and rewatch something, like you can rediscover shows. Like there's shows that we're not watching right now, like maybe Get Shorty on Epix. And
are you watching Get Shorty on Epix?
I'm not. I just know that it exists. But like we could rediscover that in like 10, 15 years. Somebody's going to go back and be like, wow, nobody watched this show. There's shows like that on there now.
Right now.
Mayans MC, the Sons of Anarchy.
I've heard of that.
But like people are going to go back and rewatch that, and you're not necessarily watching it live now because it's not a thing.
But here's the problem, though. I mean, if there's so much content out there, if the only way you can discover it is to go back and watch it after it's racked up a few things, I mean, if you're spending $100 million a season, like, if you don't get a return on that quickly, you might not keep it up. It might not be around long enough for people to rediscover it.
No, but it depends on what kind of business Apple wants to get in. Do they want to get in the business of people are buying Apple TV, or do they want to get in the business of they'll be able to resell this later?
That is very true.
And say, there's an evergreen quality to this where we're going to be able to come back and resell this. Like Disney Plus is going to be taking things off, putting it back on, and that's how you're going to be able to,
into and out of the vault.
keep subscribers. That's how I'm going to stick around because
that's a good point.
You have to do that.
It's so interesting because, I mean, like, the old model was obviously you had a TV show, and then you ran it, and you sold advertising, and if it broke even, you were fine.
Yeah.
Now it's like, they don't, like, again, Apple doesn't need for, like, anybody to watch C to make it profitable as long as it gets people to sign up for their service.
Right.
It's just, it's a weird, like, the incentives are all different now. I think it's pretty good for people like us, though, for viewers.
I think so.
Because, I mean, we have an embarrassment of crap to watch.
There's so much to watch.
There's so much
Too
to watch.
much to watch.
There is too much to watch. But if enough of it is good, I don't know, at the end of the day, who cares if you have, like, good stuff to watch? It's just the problem of finding out what is worth watching, which is where folk like us can come in, by the way, who are going to watch a lot of it and report back to you. See, everybody's blind except for Jason Momoa's kids.
Wow, what a concept.
I do kind of like the Goosey Knows concept.
I wish I was in the room when they cooked that one up.
Probably a lot of coke involved.
Like, it's Jason Momoa, but he can't see.
How are they gonna like fight? Okay, we'll figure that out when it happens. Apparently, pretty soon. I think on November 12th when Apple TV Plus drops.
There you go.
Also, in the pop cultural space news, identity politics.
My favorite.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. So, James Bond is not like. Would you call him a genre figure? I think I would.
I think so.
James Bond movies are as ridiculous at their core as anything about dragons or spaceships and stuff.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, yeah.
Especially like the Roger Moore era.
Yeah. I mean, I know they try to like ground it in the past.
I mean, everything's trying to get grounded.
I suppose.
I'm waiting for the gritty take on like Teletubbies or something. That's gonna get dark.
Yeah, starring Jason. Okay, so recently there's been this talk about. Bond 25, No Time to Die. Daniel Craig comes out in April, the last Bond movie he's going to be doing. James Bond is like a big cultural icon figure, has been for a long time. The talk has been, who's going to replace Daniel Craig? And there's been talk, it's a time to make James Bond a woman. And former James Bond, my first James Bond, Pierce Brosnan, recently spoke at some film festival and said he's into it. I think we've watched the guys do it for the last 40 years, get out of the way, guys, and put a woman up there. I think it would be exhilarating. It would be exciting, he told The Hollywood Reporter. And, there is this well-sourced report that in the next movie, we're not going to get like a female James Bond. I think it's part of the problem, like the terminology. Lashana Lynch is going to be playing 007, just will inherit James Bond number. The question to you is, Josh, is it time for a female James Bond? And what does that mean exactly anyway?
I think it's time to move past like old white guy James Bond, because James Bond has come to represent more than just that over the years, like more than just Sean Connery looking people have identified with the James Bond character. And also it goes into, if you want to get into the business aspect of it, it's like, how do you keep a franchise like this viable?
Right.
It doesn't, like, the world does not exist the same way it did when even Pierce Brosnan was James Bond. Like, that was completely reinventive. And remember when people lost their minds when we had a blonde-haired, blue-eyed James Bond? Daniel Craig?
That was a weird one.
That was insane. So I don't have a problem at all with this. I actually quite like it, because the idea is that, and it's been a long-standing, fan theory or whatever, that James Bond is just like a code name. It's like 007. It's not necessarily his name. You assume the James Bond identity when you step into the role, which kind of makes sense when you continue to swap out actors in the same role. It's, you've got your Sean Connery era, which is in the 60s. It's very of the 60s. And then you transition into Roger Moore, which is very much of the 70s and the early 80s. So you've got these different iterations of Bond. And it fits because they're just different agents assuming the James Bond identity. That's why everybody knows who James Bond is. It's not one person. It's a bunch of people. It's this weird MI6, Secret Service stuff. And it makes sense in that context. And this makes even more sense that doesn't have to be just one specific type of person. James Bond can be anybody.
I think I see your point. I disagree on some points. Like, I think James Bond exists in a continuum, but like he's not Doctor Who, where you can just turn to anybody.
Yeah.
But he's not like, Tywin Lannister either, who is a set character played by a set actor. I think James Bond does have, like, he has characteristics. One of them is womanizing.
Exactly, yeah. So how do you deal with that in the modern culture? Because we've become a lot smarter about, we're talking gender politics, we've become a lot smarter about this. You go back and watch some of the old Sean Connery movies.
Oh my God, he rapes women.
They're a tough rewatch.
They're very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That Goldfinger scene. I watched it like not that long ago. It's like, how did this get past anybody?
Right.
I mean, it's interesting in terms of womanizing, because it's kind of like, as he's evolved, like he's always had that aspect, right? But like, whereas in Sean Connery time, you're right, he was treated as like, he straight up sexually assaults people.
Yeah.
And it's treated as a cool thing. Whereas with Daniel Craig, like they kind of like made it more, like it's almost like a toxic thing he has to grapple with.
Yeah.
It has always sort of been there. I think part of this debate is the terminology. I don't know if when you say female James Bond, do you mean a new character who is a woman who is named James Bond, or do you mean like 007, like Lashana Lynch, who is playing a different character named, I don't know, Harriet Spy, who just has the code name 007?
Yeah, well then
does that qualify as a female James Bond?
I would say so, yes, because
if that's true, then I'm on board with that.
But then you're changing, because then we go into a different conversation of it's hard enough to get some people on board with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed James Bond. If you go with just 007 as the code name, then it's no longer James Bond. It's a 007 franchise, which, it's kind of been wishy-washy in between years. It's not necessarily not a 007
it's not like
franchise.
Bond is in the title. It's not like James Bond, Tomorrow Never Dies.
That's true, but like you refer to it as like the James Bond franchise, and you would have to switch your terminology to its 007, which is fine because we've gone back and forth. Those are interchangeable to me. James Bond and 007. That's why it's like the James Bond and attaching it to 007 and just making it a thing, that makes the most sense. James Bond can be anybody.
I like the 007 idea because I don't know. I look back on it, and Barbara Broccoli, who's the real life name of a woman who runs the James Bond franchise, this is her take that it is a character.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do see like a continuity with the character. I don't think it would work, but I would be fine with like, sure, have a 007, just have her.
Well, the whole 007 continuity doesn't make any sense.
Oh,
like,
no.
So I'm not too concerned about that.
That's also very true.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like this is an airtight thing or anything.
No, and it's also not like, Spider-Man where you have like the Sam Raimi and then you have the Mark Webb and then you've got now whatever they're doing with I don't know who directs the new Spider-Man movies. It's kind of interchangeable.
I forget.
But like you have three distinct eras of these, and you have very distinct reboot points. Whereas James Bond feels a little bit more seamless, where it's a little tongue in cheek at the beginning, where they're like, "Oh, guess it's not." Like when they did On Her Majesty's Secret Service, George Lazenby, the woman runs away from him, and he looks at the camera and he goes, "This wouldn't happen to the other fella," referring to Sean Connery. So it's kind of tongue in cheek. And like Goldeneye starts with a bunch of low shots and background shots of Pierce Brosnan because he kind of looks like Timothy Dalton. So you're like, I don't know. So it's a little bit more seamless than like, here's a hard reboot. Like Casino Royale was more of like, here's a hard reboot. But even then you're watching it, you're like, is this a prequel? Is this a reboot? What's going on here? And you just kind of don't necessarily care. I think that there would be initial reaction to a female James Bond, just like there was reaction to we can't have a black James Bond with Idris Elba, even though that was perfect.
There was some poll that said most people could be okay with that, but not with a female James Bond.
Well, I mean, I guess we're moving in the right direction. I guess you just find something else people are mad about, and then they're fine with the last thing. But like, there's no distinct reboot point. People are going to get over this, and we're just going to be looking at this in like 15, 20 years and being like, oh, it's just how it works now.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I wonder that like if when you make these changes, there's going to be this giant blowback, which is just how the internet works and how cultural change works or how anything works. People have been like going to be like, SJW, keep your politics out of my James Bond movie, yada yada yada. I mean, and you're right, it always passes, but like the fear of that blowback is, I think, is real. It can like actually stop people from doing it. And of course, it's used. Like I saw Piers Morgan today saying like no female James Bond on my watch, which was his like as if you
lost me at Piers Morgan.
I know, but it's unfortunate how like I can already feel people are just waiting to turn into a flashpoint.
I mean, that's society. Like people will freak out.
Well, that's modern society.
I mean, they gave
society,
they gave Superman a mustache, and people are like, "What?
No,
what is this?"
They took it out.
Well, I gave Superman a mustache in my heart.
Okay, so I think we solved this issue.
We'll never solve this issue, but
no, let's take credit. We solved this.
We solved gender politics on
the
Take the
solution
Black.
Was to do the thing that works for everybody. Get on it.
Nobody's ever going to go outside ever again. Bomb shelters and silos.
Cool with that.
That's the future.
Are there any comments, by the way, or is it like not visible?
I don't know. I can't find the comments.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sure you're saying all kinds of really interesting stuff, guys, but apparently we can't find the comments today. But just yell it out loud, and maybe we'll just kind of pick it up.
Great discussion.
Good. You know that?
Thank you, Julie.
All right, any other comments, Josh, before we segue into the second part of our program?
Oh, my favorite part of the program.
Yes, this is a part that we call
Song of Dan and
A
Josh.
Song of Dan and Josh. And by the way, there was a lot of news this week we didn't even get to. Like, a bunch of people got cast and stuff. You know that Gillian Anderson is playing Margaret Thatcher in The Crown?
Yeah, talk about
Scully.
blowback. People are upset about that.
No,
They're
they
like,
weren't.
Yeah, they
Were
were.
they?
Oh,
Why?
yeah. Because she's like British, but she's not really British, but she's kind of British.
John Lithgow wasn't British. He played Winston Churchill.
I mean, look, I'm not saying that I agree with it.
Brits play Americans all the time.
I think it's the thing where, like, she was born in London. Then
She was born in Chicago.
She was born in Chicago. She grew up in London. Then she comes back, and it's like, and I can't really blame her for this because, like, I would assume, like, if you're have dual citizenship like that,
Yeah.
it's wherever you are. But like, people are like, oh, but she's in America doing the X-Files. She sounds like a Midwestern girl. And then as soon as she does like Graham Norton's show, she's got a Cockney slang, and I'm just like, "Ugh, okay.
Yeah, she's an actor. Actors have a personality. They're just going to pick up whatever's around them.
I don't know. She's herself. I
Well, I'm looking forward
support
to it.
Gillian Anderson. But like that's to the point where people are gonna freak out about anything.
She
They're
go
like,
bomb
how
those
dare
Falcons.
Gillian Anderson play, Margaret Thatcher? Ugh.
I didn't even know there was blowback. Everybody loves Gillian Anderson.
I do.
Should go bomb those Falkland Islands. Okay.
There you go.
Anyway,
I
A
don't
Song of
endorse
Dan.
that.
I'm sorry.
I don't endorse that.
Well, it's done. I'm
just kidding.
She's gonna fictionally. This is stupid. Anyway, A Song of
Catelyn
Dan and
2.
Josh. Catelyn 2. Only the second Catelyn chapter, and we are like a third through the bookish. All right. So in this chapter, basically, Robb has sent her to treat with Renly Baratheon, who is one of 4 kings currently knocking around. Maybe even 5. No, we haven't got to Billy Greyjoy yet. Knocking around, claiming the Iron Throne. And his idea is, okay, go treat with Renly, see if we can get him on our side, then we can team up against the Lannisters. Good idea, right? Good idea.
In theory.
She gets to his big old camp, and what does she find, Josh?
Magnificence. She finds the tournament, and we
She does
find,
find
speaking of earlier topics that we talked
And
about, she
magnificence.
finds Brienne of Tarth.
This is Brienne of Tarth introductory chapter.
And
Yay.
Marjorie
Yeah, Margaret Tyrell.
Tyrell.
You can call her Marguerite.
It always throws me off the way it's spelled. I'm like, Margaret.
I know,
Too many
it is
E's and
weird.
A's. I'm like, come on. Daenerys is the same
It's
way.
like Marjorie, like isn't it's one of those Game of Thrones names that like isn't that different than a normal name. Like you could name somebody Marjorie and it wouldn't be absurd, but like she's the first thing you get when you Google because it's still a little bit weird. There's a little known Lannister who was on the show named Uncle Kevin Lannister.
Uncle Kevin.
It's spelled stupid.
I need the Uncle
but it's
Kevin,
Kevin.
spinoff.
He got blew up when Cersei blew up the church.
As many did. R.I.P.
As many did.
The Fallen.
Uncle Kevin, and he's actually more in the books. You get to know him. Yes. But that's one of those names that I think like it's too close. It's too normal.
Yeah,
like it
a
throws
little
me
bit.
off.
A little
Uncle
bit.
Kevin. Marjorie is just perfect. It's just weird enough. Anyway, we do meet Brienne and Marjorie. We also see a whole lot of Renly, and he is all about pomp and circumstance. Here's a description of what Catelyn sees when she gets to his camp. Thousands of cook fires filled the air with a pale smoky haze. The horse lines alone stretched out over leagues. A forest had surely been felled to make the tall staffs that held the banners. Great siege engines lined the grassy verge of the Rose Road. Mangalees and trebuchets and rolling rams mounted on wheels taller than a man on horseback. The steel points of pikes flamed red with sunlight, as if already blooded, while the pavilions of the knights and high lords spread from the grass like silken mushrooms. She saw men with spears and men with swords, men in steel caps and mail shirts, camp followers strutting their charms, archers fletching arrows, teamsters driving wagons, swineherds driving pigs, pages running messages, squires honing swords, knights riding palfreys, grooms leading ill-tempered destriers. This is a fearsome lot of men, said Wendell Manderley observed as they crossed the ancient stone span from Bitterbridge which took its name. That it is, Catelyn agreed. I like the description. I think it's very evocative. Like,
I do.
there's like stuff going on in this place.
Yeah, it's very extravagant.
It is.
As well.
Martin has said that some of his favorite passages are like just things descriptions he writes, and no one ever comments on them. That they're all in for like, the big red wedding moments.
I feel
but
like we've commented on them quite a bit. I enjoy those.
I mean, there's a lot of book here, but yes, we've done it when we can. Hey, look the comments. All right.
Oh my god, I got the comments to work.
Great.
Julie likes Pierce Brosnan.
I like Pierce Brosnan. My mom.
She
really
also
likes
watches
Pierce Brosnan.
Mayans, Outlander. Wow. We missed a lot with Julie.
We did.
Sorry, Julie.
Outlander. We gotta talk about Outlander more. Anyway, so yeah, she gets there and she finds that they're having a tournament.
Yeah.
People on horseback knock each other down, get up and fight.
Poor Loras.
Poor Loras loses to Brienne. And Catelyn is not a fan of this. I think she even calls it this is madness, Catelyn thought. Real enemies on every side and half the realm in flames, and Renly sits here playing at war like a boy with his first wooden sword. Is that fair?
I don't know. I think she's got a low opinion of him, so like, I'm not too terribly surprised. It's just have a high opinion. It's like a lukewarm opinion at best. So she's obviously not going to be super fair. I don't think it's that unfair. The extravagance of everything is, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance here.
Tons.
Where it's like, I am an important person, capital IP important person. So
I mean, I think like her and Chris, like Catelyn's someone who is lost in this war already. Her husband's dead. Like she lost someone important to her. She's going to lose her son and her life before too long. And, here's Renly. Here's this guy who's a bit of a good time boy who's marching toward King's Landing very slowly, has claimed the throne, claimed the crown, and he's, like, having tournaments and moving really, real slow, holding big feasts.
Yeah.
And I think to her, it's a little bit like, you're not respecting the seriousness of what you're doing here. Like, this is war. This is going to get ugly.
yeah.
I mean, I think she has a couple people have a line in there like, this, like, Renly's generation of people who didn't grow up, like, when King's Landing was sacked, when the Mad King got ousted. Like, they haven't seen that crap. Yeah. These are millennials. These are Generation Z.
Westerosian millennials.
Yes. Idea of war, where it's fun. Like, and why wouldn't it be? You're marching to war, you're going to claim your throne, you're going to get rich, you're going to have glorious fights. And Catelyn is, more like the Generation X people who have Xers. Yes, who have been to work and they've been through the mill and they've seen suffering. This analogy doesn't work perfectly. But,
no, I mean, because
it's a little, it's just tasteful.
We've seen Martin draw on like real life things before, and I feel like this is a commentary on the generations after the baby boomers, the greatest generation, where we almost like fetishize like World War II to the point where it's like, these were men when men were real men, and this is like, we got things done, and this whole kind of bravado that's been attached to that has been very militarized, and that's what we associate it with. Like, we associate we associate the greatest generation with World War II, and we associate the baby boomers with coming out of that generation and being like, okay, this is like how it used to be. And then you get down the line to where we are with like Renly, and it's like, well, this is just the way it works. Of course I'm going to go. Of course I'm going to sign up and go to war because it's been glorified, and this is how I'm going to be important in the world. And so then he compensates with all of the lavish things that he has, all of the very upfront, in-your-face stylings of his life. It all makes sense, and I feel like that's maybe George R. R. Martin making a comment on that.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, the other question is, though, okay, so, yes, he's extravagant, he's entitled, he's a little frivolous. He might still make a good king. Like, there's this moment where, Catelyn's getting a little bit heated with her lords. The one, Lord Randall Tarley, actually, Sam's dad, who is not at this point in the show, but he is here in the books. He's like, why you send a woman? Should have send your son to host with us. And it gets a little bit heated on either side. And then really like kind of laughs it off and like says, he calms people. And then he goes and, talks to her and shows her what he's doing, makes an offer to Robb. I think Renly, he's not a bad negotiator, like interpersonal guy. He might not actually be terrible on the throne.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? As opposed to like somebody like, I know he's better than Joffrey. Or a Stannis, who's a lot harder. Or do you need hardness?
Anybody but Joffrey. I don't know. I feel like Robb's got it in his blood to where he'd be able to figure it out. So
yeah, Robb would be a good option.
Yeah, that's kind of that would be my pick. But
okay, well you know that's not going to happen.
It's definitely not Joffrey. So
no. Anyway, Renly makes Catelyn an offer, basically saying, look, if Robb bends the knee to me, he can stay in the north. He can even call himself king in the north, whatever. But bend the knee to me, and sure, I'll be happy to team up with you. We can take on the Lannisters together. Good offer, bad offer?
Bad offer.
Oh, yeah?
Don't bend the knee.
Why not? Why's everyone bend the freaking knee?
Because it's the hubris of not bending the knee. Don't bend the knee, because then you're entering into some sort of like bond, and then you can't like break that. And if you break the oath,
Renly wants to be king. If you're king, your subjects have to bend the knee to you.
That's
They are your vassals.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't think Rob should bend the knee. I think that I'm looking at it from his perspective, and it's like
Rob's perspective.
Yeah,
because what he wants is independence for the North.
yeah. So it's like you're not going to want to involve yourself in something that's going to continue to just keep things the way that they are.
Well, yeah, but then if you don't bend the knee, then Renly doesn't work with you, and then maybe you don't have the backup you need to, I don't know, fight the Freys and not get killed at a wedding or something.
That's true. I guess it depends on how much Rob thinks he's going to be king. So,
I mean, Rob thinks he's going to be king of the North. He doesn't want the Iron Throne.
No, but
Renly
also the
does.
people of the North are very proud people, as we've
They are. But I
come
mean,
to
you know, it's been generations. They've bowed to other people. They never particularly liked it, but they did it. They bowed to the Targaryens. They were subjects of
I
Robert.
don't know. It's that teenage spunk in him, that fire that he's got.
Gotta had to spoon. Yes, indeed. Okay. Anyway, Brienne. We also meet Brienne here. Makes a pretty good impression.
Excellent impression.
Well, why? What do you think? What do you think for introduction?
I don't know. It was a really cool introduction. It's like, because I feel like it was set up to be like, oh, he just got beat by another male knight.
Oh,
And
totally.
it's like,
Oh, yeah.
Excuse
We
me,
don't
this
know.
is Brienne of Tarth, and it's a complete plot twist.
She describes him as just the first glimpse of a big knight in blue armor, and she just like, of course, she assumes that it's a man. She doesn't, because that's weird.
But I thought that was a cool twist, because I didn't know that Brienne was introduced in this chapter too. So even though I know who she is and the
Did
story, I
you
was like,
know,
oh,
like,
cool.
when they mentioned like a big knight in blue armor beating up guys? Did you think like, oh, that's probably Brienne? Were you surprised?
No,
by
I
the
was
rest of it?
trying to figure out who it was, and I was like, because I was getting like the mountain vibes from it.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, is this something? Did I like miss? Because then we've gone over characters that aren't necessarily big on the show, but they're in the books. So I was like, I wonder if maybe this is like, I actually at one point pictured the Bud Light Knight, so there was that.
He has made.
I was
his,
like, my God, the
his
crossover.
pick.
But no, it was really cool to have Brienne. That introduction, I think, really. I can
it
see
was
why
solid.
people would be invested in her character from the jump there.
She is very, very likable. Mm-hmm. She is very, very kind of a. I mean, again, like she's with Renly's millennial group. Like she does have a lot of naivete about her. Like when Catelyn says, this won't last. They're the Knights of Summer and winter is coming. She's basically like, no, we are great. We are pure. I think I even wrote it down. Oh, I do like the description. Out of armor, her body seemed ungainly, broad of hip and thick of limb, with hunched muscular shoulders and no bosom to speak of. And it was clear from her every action that Brienne knew it and suffered for it. She spoke only in answer and seldom lifted her gaze from her food. It's just an interesting contrast, right? That she's this powerful, like, strong woman, but because she is so non-traditional looking, and because she's so aggressively does not fit into the role we're supposed to have, she's made fun of like every second of every day of her life.
Yeah.
The only time she feels comfortable is when she's wailing on somebody in a suit of armor. Otherwise, it's a horror show because it's all awkwardness because there's no place for her out of armor.
No.
There's none, not in the society.
No, and I mean, I'd have a lot of pent up rage too, and I feel like that's very cathartic, but there's just so many fascinating qualities to Brienne's character.
I agree.
And you get a lot of it right away. So she was one of my favorite characters on the show, and already I'm just like, okay, I'm in the books. And it's also trying to picture Gwendolyn Christie versus all of these descriptions that you have, which I understand.
It's true.
We're looking different from the show to the book.
Oh, of course. Like, they describe her as, again, I just read that thing about her being so ungainly. They describe her as, like,
And
lots
it was
of
like,
freckles.
it hit hard. It's like,
Yeah.
man, that the description's just like, wow, that's visceral.
What do you think of Catelyn's comment? Like, Catelyn sees her and sees her like, oh, it's pretty cool. But she also says, pity filled Catelyn's heart. Is there any creature on earth as unfortunate as an ugly woman?
I mean, that's rough.
It's very rough.
It's a tough break, but
I think that's where Catelyn's coming from as a, like, she is a woman who fits into, she has a role in society.
Yeah.
And again, this society, as a woman, you have things you do. Like, you don't do this. You don't do what Brienne's doing. And I mean, again, if your role is to be married and to have kids, like, yeah, your looks are your currency in a way that it's just not true of if you're a man. And that's why Brienne is so beaten down when she's not beating down other people, and so kind of quiet and reticent and reserved, is because she doesn't fit in and she doesn't fit that role at all, and so she just draws into herself.
Yeah.
And I think Catelyn sees that, like, in this, if you're an ugly woman in this society, yeah, you're going to have a lot of problems. So that comment is, it's a little unfortunate, but I do think it reflects something that's real as far as living in this world goes.
Julie says, how dare anyone not do what Catelyn thinks they should be doing?
I mean, she doesn't say not to do it, Julie.
It's true.
In fact, as we know, Catelyn comes to really appreciate Brienne. I think she appreciates Brienne now. Mm-hmm. Just, she has pity for her.
Well,
and I mean,
pity and appreciation are two very different things, I think. But I think there's the admiration of she's doing something out the beaten trail. She's not conforming. And Catelyn's kind of like, she's not conforming because she got no other options. But
I don't know about that.
I think there's an appreciation or a respect that Catelyn has for that.
In this chapter, it's mostly pity.
I guess I'm giving Catelyn too much credit.
I mean, I think in this chapter. I mean, you read the chapter too. I think in this chapter, it's mostly, when she talks about Brienne, it's mostly, oh, you poor girl. Which, again, I think is a valid response to have. But as we know, it'll grow. And it's not that she hates Brienne. This is so unusual to see in this world. And by the way, the commons are with her. Like, they cheer for Loras in the debate. They boo Brienne before she unlocks the helmet. Because Loras is popular. Loras is the cool kid. Loras fits in. Loras is the badass knight. And, of course, that it's subverted a little bit because he's actually gay. But we don't really know that, which we can have a whole conversation about a bit. I have opinions on that.
Yeah.
But that's probably for a little later.
Do we get a Loras chapter?
We don't know. That's kind of my problem. We never get a Loras chapter. We never get a Renly chapter. He kind of hides the gays in the books. Yeah. It's actually kind of better on the show because it's more open about it.
They are very open on the show, I was going to say.
I mean, it's kind of stereotypical on the show, too, because, they cast, like, a willowy-haired dude as Loras. He's supposed to be, like, Butcher. But, at the same... then again, they describe us pretty here, too. It's a whole thing. Gender politics, sexual politics are all good topics. Anyway, I think it's a solid chapter. It ends with, Renly talking to Catelyn like, I'm definitely going to be king. Join up with me. No one's going to fight me. And then a messenger comes and says, oh, your brother Stannis is calling himself king and wants to fight. It's like, what? Which is a solid way to end.
Yeah.
So Renly not as sure as he thinks he is.
So you're saying that he's overcompensating with all of his...
I don't think he's overcompensating. I think he's just young and really full of piss and vinegar, which is not a swear when it's used in that phrase, I think. And just expects things to go easier for him than they will.
Millennials.
We're both millennials. We're talking about that. I'm barely a millennial, but I am. And of course, and Renly, not as he points out to Catelyn, is the younger brother. Doesn't really have a claim to the throne exactly, but he thinks he's so much more likable than Stannis that he will make a better king. So he's just going to push it anyway. We can talk about that more when we get back to Catelyn 3. When we'll see Stannis and Renly together, mixing it up. More Brienne, more Catelyn, more Stannis, more Renly. More
like the Brady Bunch.
Assorted lords. Any other thoughts, Josh?
No. Do we want to talk about your vocabulary word of the week?
Did I put one down? Oh, yeah, I did.
You put down dandle.
Dandle. Yeah, there was a guy who was dandling a serving wench in his lap, and I was like, what does that mean?
I love how in parentheses you put, to move, parentheses, a baby or young child.
I just copy-paste the definition from Google.
To dandle. And then I'm just, like, picturing, like, Michael Jackson, like, dandling. Like...
No! Don't bring up Michael Jackson doing anything, least of all dandling.
Hey, it says right there, the definition. There we go. And if anything, you put that in my head, Dan.
No, I didn't.
I come on this show to talk about the
out.
great literature of George R.R. Martin, and you're dandling my thoughts over a railing. It's like, it's incredible.
Anyway, I mean, the word dandle, the reason I put it down was because, again, I didn't know what it meant. And now I do. But it's kind of a fun use of it because it's supposed to be for a baby or a small child. He's using it to describe a guy with, like, a wench in his lap, doing some handsy stuff under the table at the feast. So George R. Martin having some fun with language, because language is very fun.
It is.
And we should learn more about it. And I don't know where the frick your brain's going with it, but we'll pick up that mystery next week. Dandle. We're back next week, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Josh will be back here next week because Mia's still on vacation. We're also on iTunes, Google Play, and podcast form if you want to listen to us there. Thanks so much for listening or watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.